You have the instance in Colorado where a Fusion Center staffer was basically, you had a politician who put a lot of pressure on a staffer to access information about one of his candidates. And this employee was stuck in the middle and caved and accessed this information, and it was used against somebody. The Maryland Fusion Center, it was actually the Highway Patrol in Maryland, they entered 50, some people say 3, some people say 56, anti-war activist names into the terror database for no reason other than the fact that they were activists. When we visited the Fusion Center in Phoenix, Arizona, they told us that if you're planning a rally in Phoenix and your name is listed as the organizer on the website, they're going to run your name through the Fusion Center databases with absolutely no criminal predicate whatsoever, just to see if maybe you're a part of a radical group. Okay, so these Fusion Centers have a track record of bad things happening. You saw what happened in Missouri. There was a report that came out of North Central Texas Fusion Center that really went after the left side of the political spectrum, whereas the one in Missouri really went after the libertarian conservative side of the political spectrum. Some would argue libertarianism is left too. So these Fusion Centers have a long track history of being abusive, of profiling, of misusing information. Now that's not to say that they are all bad. One of the things I learned through going through these 4 hearings is that they do provide a great service to your state and local law enforcement community. For example, in Kansas City, it's one city, it's in about 4 different counties. So now the state, county, and city law enforcement officials have an easier way of communicating with each other. Well, that's great, that's fine, I'm okay with that. But the problem is, that nasty little thing called the federal government, they like to get their little fingers inside of everything and just ruin it. And that is what they are doing here, ladies and gentlemen. These Fusion Centers could be providing a great service to your local law enforcement community. But the problem is, the federal government, international governments, and private corporations have greater access to the information that is being tracked and kept than we as average citizens do. Now, if you look into the Fusion Center guidelines, you will see that they call for the intake of all sorts of information. They call for healthcare records, financial records, utility usage. Notice you got your healthcare bill, you got your cap and trade bill coming in here, right? They call literally for the inputting of every type of data that you could imagine. Your red light cameras are accessible through the Fusion Centers. Your speed cameras are accessible through the Fusion Centers. A lot of private surveillance footage is available through the Fusion Centers. Basically, any sort of data that is being collected, it could be a grocery store, your little swipe shopper card. Fusion Centers have agreements with private corporations to share this type of information with each other. Now, ideally, they say it would only be shared if there was reasonable suspicion to believe that a crime had been committed, right? Do you think that's really what's going on? I can guarantee you that's not what's going on. And not only are they collecting all of this information, but when we were at the Texas Homeland Security Fusion Center Conference, we learned about the directions surveillance police state is headed. I told you about the NCIC database, the FBI's database. There's a fingerprint database in there called the FIRNS, I think is the acronym for it. Now, that is being converted to a new database called NGI, Next Generation Identification. And in this database, they're moving from just collecting fingerprints to palm prints, retinal and iris scans, facial recognition, and a scar and tattoo database. Are any of you in this room comfortable with the federal government having access to facial scans of you or your children's faces? What about body scans of you or your family's body as they walk through TSA? Is anybody at all comfortable with this disgusting, corrupt institution called the federal government having access to the most intimate parts of our body, the most intimate biometric information that exists? I'm not okay with this at all. I'm infuriated. I could sit here and talk to you guys for hours about every single little tiny piece of the puzzle that is infuriating me, but I would prefer to talk about some solutions. Now, these fusion centers, as I said, are not inherently bad. The people who staff these fusion centers are not inherently bad. John and I have traveled, I think our group has visited a total of 13 fusion centers to date. John and I haven't been the only ones who've been going and visiting these. We visited most of them. And we've sat down and had conversations with these people. You know, they are just dads, mothers, who worked their way up through the law enforcement community, who took a position that was offered to them. They're just good old boys doing their job, and I'm going to tell you, they do not understand technology. I sat in the Texas Homeland Security Fusion Center conference and watched this guy trying to explain to a bunch of Texas law enforcement officials how to manually enter information into an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, and they're talking about layers on a map. And okay, databases. You know, these folks didn't really understand what was going on, and this poor gentleman's trying to step it down to the most simplistic explanation. But the fact of the matter is, if these people have trouble understanding what an Excel spreadsheet database is, do you think they're going to understand the repercussions of retinal scans and facial scanning technology and palm prints? They don't understand it. They don't understand the amount of power that they have in their hands. In fact, in Houston right now, they have 3-pound portable thumbprint devices that they're bringing up on traffic stops. And people who don't know their rights are voluntarily submitting to fingerprint scans at their vehicle. Chief of Police of Houston was there speaking, and he told this story about how they found where some guy lived on it was a felony drug warrant from years ago. They found out where he lived. They showed up to his house. He wasn't there, but his son was there. They got him to somehow do a thumbprint scan right there at the front door of his own home. They found out he too had warrants out for him, and they held that against him and said, "Oh, we won't arrest you if you tell us where your daddy is." And they turned the son against his father by using fingerprint technology, and then bragged about it later at the DHS conference down in Texas. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that. The fact of the matter is, the general public, as well as our law enforcement, they do not understand the Constitution, which was designed to protect us from such infringements. They do not understand. And I know this for a fact, because when we were down in New Orleans for the National Fusion Center Conference, which is absolutely an amazing story,